The recurring theme in all these readings is a choice between the ways and the thinking of this world, or society, if you want to put it that way, and the ways and the thinking of God. I mean, you see this, Jesus says to Peter, you're thinking as man does. You're not thinking as God, the way God does. And indeed, you see that in Peter's, and what Peter says to Jesus. I mean, if you were in Peter's shoes, what Peter suggests makes a ton of sense. Peter knows all about messiahs. His society, the times of the day, have taught him repeatedly that the Messiah would come by force. That was it. It was a matter of force. The Messiah was going to make Israel the great nation that it once was. The Messiah was going to throw out any enemies, in this case the Romans who happened to be there at the time. He knew that. He knew all that. That's exactly how he was thinking, because it was how he'd been taught to think. And so when Jesus comes up with this, the Messiah's going to, get killed and rise 3 days later, Peter's like, I don't know what you're talking about. He's not thinking that way. Jeremiah, this is a great lament of Jeremiah. He's tired. He's just having a really bad day. But the reason he's having a bad day is because he is thinking and seeing the ways of God and nobody else is. He's living in Jerusalem just a short time before the Babylonians are going to come and capture the city, destroy the city, and indeed take over the nation. It would be the last time, with a few very minor exceptions, that Israel was an independent nation. And Jeremiah knows that this is God's hand is in this, and God has told him to prophesy this, explain that if you, as this nation do not turn things around, that's what's going to happen. But nobody wants to hear this, of course. It's a crazy, unpopular message, because everybody else is thinking, no, everything's fine. We are the children of Abraham. We are the chosen people. God will take care of us. And so there was this conflict of how they looked at it. And then Jesus, going back to him, he says to the disciples, you want to gain your life? You need to lose it. Meaning, at least in one way, you need to lose the life that is taught to you by society and the culture. That life's got to go. And you need to gain the life, the life that God gives us. That's all sounds reasonable, of course, but how do you do it? Because you and I suffer from the exact same problem that Peter suffers. It's not that Peter is against the idea of Jesus' vision of a Messiah. It's not that at all. He doesn't even know it exists. And even when he hears it for the first time, it's kind of like, I don't get that. I had just a silly example of this a few weeks ago. I was talking, I was with the high school youth group, and we were talking about ecology and the environment and care for the environment, what you might do, things like that. And I just happened to point out to them that I've been here for a little over 2 years and have yet to buy a trash bag. And they looked at me, and I said, oh, no, I mean, it's just, there's just all sorts of things that you can put garbage in. And this is not even just the plastic bags from the grocery store, because I never get those, but just all sorts of things. You go up to the nursery and you get a bag of potting soil. And it's a nice bag, and if you're careful how you open it, it makes a perfectly good garbage bag. It was just how I was brought up. I mean, I know it sounds weird. They thought it was weird. But the point was that they were just, you could tell by the look in their face, like, I have no idea what you're talking about. Of course you buy trash bags. You have to put something in the trash can. And when it's empty, and when you run out, you just go buy trash. Like, what are you talking about? And I think you and I struggle with that same thing in so many ways. Let me just offer you two examples. One's a little easier than the other. Think back to the last car you bought, or perhaps the last house you bought, and ask yourself, what were the questions that were going through your head when you were buying this thing? Like for example, one of the possibilities for the house is you might have been asking yourself, well, if this is how much money I have to spend, what's the biggest house I can buy with this amount of money? That is a perfectly acceptable thing in our society because we equate big houses with success and all that kind of thing. Or with the car, for example. I know lots of people who they would be horrified to ask the first question, do I need a car at all? And certainly, those that, don't, trade in cars every couple of years, I think that's a valid question. Do you really need this car? But then, what are the normal questions we ask? Again, can we afford it? So we look at, the payments, well, can I afford $280 a month or whatever it is? And then we look at, features in the car and all that sort of stuff. And I would just suggest to you that if you thought about the car with a stewardship mentality, you'd ask entirely different questions. You might get to these other questions, but they wouldn't be the first questions you'd ask, because you'd be thinking in terms of what's the best use. So, okay, I need a car, that's fine. So, but what do I actually need in a car? Do I need, as my father used to put it, good, honest, cheap transportation? Or do I need a status symbol? Those are different things, of course. And I would suggest to you that as I'm talking to you, some of you are going like, I think I just lost him. I don't know what he's talking about. And the only reason I can bring these questions up is because I've been on this stewardship journey maybe a little longer than a lot of people, and I'm not sure I'm any good at it all the time, but I owned a crazy nice sports car at one point in my life, and I wasn't asking those questions. But my point here is that it's so hard to pick, if you will, to choose I want to do God's way until we can actually see it. And so the point of this homily is not so much to convince you to think differently when you buy a car, but just to think differently. That's what Paul said here. If you pick this up, do not conform yourselves to this age, but be transformed by the renewal of your mind. You and I need to learn to think differently. And it's a journey, I can assure you. So if I just put a couple odd questions in your head about cars, maybe 2-3 years from now you'll go buy a car. Maybe that will be a moment for you to say, wait. Maybe I should sit and give this a little thought and pay a little less attention to the ads and a little less attention to all the hype about a particular brand or a particular car, and just think about this and try to think about it the way God would think about it. Second example I can tell you, is crazy hard, and I will tell you also, I don't have this worked out at all. But over the last year, I've been really struggling to try to think differently about the use of force. It dawned on me that, you watch a Hallmark movie or something like that, where, the tension in the movie is some young boy, for example, getting bullied by somebody, and when it all gets resolved, it gets resolved because somebody takes the kid under his wing and teaches him how to fight, and then he beats up the bully, and then we all think that's great. And I like the way that feels, but over the last year I've been trying to think, wow, I don't think that's the way God thinks. Like I overcome force with force. Jesus never said any such thing. He was the one who said, oh, your enemy, you should love them. Oh, you should set up boundaries. Don't get me wrong. Bullying is wrong and something ought to be done with it. But the question is is force the way to deal with that? Because as I've been going through this, I've been trying to think about this. I've just been looking at all these really interesting sort of, I don't know, things that just don't seem right. If you know anything about World War I, every nation that fought in World War I was a Christian nation, would have said that. Every one of them was praying to the exact same God with the exact same message. Oh God, we know that you think that our cause is just. We're right. Help us to kill those who are wrong. It's not right. I mean, something's not right. And you'd be hard-pressed to go into that and dig around in that and actually pick sides and actually say, oh, well, those people, they were wrong and they were praying wrong. I'm not sure about that. Especially when you consider that many of those nations used Catholic just war theory to justify the war. And they were on opposite sides. Not sure. And again, I'm not trying to preach about the use of force. What I'm trying to do is get you to understand that this is what you and I need to do. We need to not just say, oh, let me get caught up in the hype of the United States military, the greatest military that the world has ever seen. Let me just not get hyped up in that and think the way the culture thinks. That maybe I need to put on the mind of God, as Paul says, and try to think about this differently. Because it's entirely possible that the way you and I think about force in the military, whether in big scale or in small scale, just around the neighborhood, somebody ought to fix that. Maybe we're thinking the wrong way. Maybe we're just like Peter. We're saying something that sounds perfectly fine to us, but to God is like, oh, okay, you're not thinking in the right way. It's hard. It is very hard because you and I, the vast majority of all the messages we get are from our society, and we just think so many things are just normal. Whether it's something as silly as, yes, you should buy trash bags, or to something as big as, well, no, of course we have to invade this country because of the despot that is running this country. You and I, the good Lord is calling us to put on the mind of Christ, to think differently. It's a journey, and that's really all I can do is encourage you to take a step on the journey. And if your journey is anything like mine with force, it's not an easy journey, and it's not clear. It's not like you figure this out in 5 minutes. I've been at this for a year, and if you stop me after Mass today and ask me some practical question about the use of force, I'm probably not going to be able to answer it. I can just tell you, I'm just pretty sure that I need to think differently about this, and about that, and about cars, and all sorts of things. And so let's take that invitation from our good Lord. He wants the best life for us, and so I'm sure he wants us to think differently because it will be better for us. So let's try to think differently.